3 o'clock on a Friday here. This is the Postgame Show. I'm Elijah Campbell, and no Jay Phillips today. Another DNP coach's decision for Mr. Phillips, but I'll be taking you here through this first hour, and then we'll replay some of our best stuff from the week because it was a very busy week. This was a celebratory Brews Day, talking about the win against Clemson and the college football playoff, the Citrus Bowl against Illinois. There was a lot to get to with Ryan Brewer, so we'll replay that hour in the 5 o'clock. In the next hour, we will be playing our conversation with outgoing athletic director Ray Tanner, talking about the hiring of Jeremiah Donati, the future of the athletic department for South Carolina, his time as the athletic director at South Carolina, the success of the football team, and a whole lot more. It was a fantastic conversation with Ray. So if you missed that on Tuesday, we'll be replaying it here in the 4 o'clock hour. But I'll be taking you up until that time because this is one of the more interesting, or I want to say more underrated, football weekends of the year. And I'll get to all of this here during the first hour of the show today because we have the Heisman Trophy ceremony on Saturday, the Army-Navy game on Saturday, and this is one of the best Army-Navy games ever given the success of both Army and Navy, both offenses high octane in terms of their rushing attack. This is the best offense these teams have had in a long time. These are the best, probably the best that we've had Army-Navy together in decades. And man, we were only a couple of games away during the regular season for getting an Army-Navy AAC championship game, and then turning around and having an Army-Navy game right after that just for the love of the game itself. Almost had that, but not quite. Tulane ended up beating Navy and participating in the conference title game, and Army beat the hell out of Tulane, and Army's the AAC champs in their first ever year in being in a conference. Wild enough. But you have that, and you have the Celebration Bowl on Saturday, too. Coach Barry in his first year at South Carolina State filling in for Coach Pugh, a legendary Hall of Fame head coach, and in year one just seems to do what he does, and that's win. That's bring players with him, and that's win right off the bat, winning the MEAC. They can play Jackson State tomorrow in the Celebration Bowl in Atlanta. Game's going to be on ABC, so if you just love the program of South Carolina State, have some statriotism, as I like to say, and cheer on your fellow man in this state, that is one I highly recommend you watch. Really excited about that. And we have some high school football state championship games this weekend as well, including a really interesting development right now. Summerville up 14-6 on Dutch Fork early in the second. Again, it's early, but I don't think Dutch Fork's given up more than 14 points in a game this entire season. They've given up 14 in the first quarter. Here right now, Dutch Fork is kind of moving the ball a little bit now. They're inside the Summerville 30. A score here can tie it if they go for two, but a classic clash in 5A. And then tonight in 4A, Westside and South Florence meet again, a rematch of last year's state championship game at that level. And what was an absolute thriller. Gamecock commit Cutter Woods going to be starting at quarterback for Westside. Jaden Sellers, younger brother of Lenoris, and also a Gamecock commit for South Florence on the other side, Amari Adams, who, according to some websites, the number one player in the state, a Clemson signee playing on the defensive line for South Florence. That one is going to be an absolute thriller. Westside still yet to take a loss this season, so that might end up being the best game of the night. And I'll also keep you updated throughout this first hour, throughout the show as well, of the goings-on in Orangeburg between Summerville and Dutch Fork. But I did kind of want to start the show off today talking about the atrocity that happened in San Francisco last night. We're about to talk in this hour about some really good football that will be happening this weekend. Some fun football stuff, celebrating college football. But my goodness, last night was an absolute atrocity on Thursday Night Football. And this is one of those unpredictable atrocities, right? Like if in the 2010s when Jags and Titans were really bad, and they're really bad this year, so, I mean, sometimes history can repeat itself and time can be a flat circle. But you would have those Thursday Night Football games where the Titans and Jags would play, and it was those ugly color rush games. And so not only was the football on the field ugly, the play ugly, but the uniforms were ugly. It was terrible viewership numbers. And it was like the classic Thursday night football that we've been, accustomed to seeing. This year, I think the league has done a lot better job of scheduling better matchups in that slot. The more Thursday night football games have involved better teams and better matchups. We've had better games this year than usual, so I'll give them that. And when you schedule 49ers and Rams, you don't do so with the intent of it being a 12-6 game in which no touchdowns are scored. That was not the intention. I don't think Roger Goodell was trying to be a sadist and inflict eye pain on everybody in this country to make them watch that game last night when they decided that this game, which has a lot of implications, the 49ers were fighting for their lives in this game because a loss put them at about 1% chance of making the playoffs. They're about as close to mathematically eliminated as you can possibly be, maybe without actually being mathematically eliminated. And the Rams with a win gives them a foot in the door of the playoffs. That NFC West race is really tight. The Seahawks only have it by a half a game now. If the Seahawks lose this weekend, then we have ourselves a tie. So there's a lot of intrigue here in that division. So I get why this would be, on paper, a really good matchup. But I can't get over the amount of time wasted watching that game that I had last night, expecting it to be really good. But here's some of the numbers as to what made this uglier than any classic Big Ten West football game you could conjure up at noon on a Saturday afternoon in October. This was even worse. The teams combined were 7 for 27 total on third down. 7 for 27. They weren't moving the sticks well at all. We had 6 field goals. No touchdowns were scored. I think the only time the ball either got in the end zone was on the interception that Brock Purdy threw near the end of the game. I don't even know if that one even made it to the end zone. It was close to it. But the interception that Brock Purdy threw at the end of the game, and anytime we had a touchback. I think that's the only time the ball got remotely close to the end zone. It almost felt like the football and the end zones themselves had a restraining order with the unwillingness to take a ball in there. But there is only a little over 4 yards per play for both teams combined. That's very low. That's very low. Usually you aim to be north of 6 for an individual team. Both teams combined, the average play in this game traveled 4 yards. No explosive plays, no sustained drives, nothing of the sort. We experienced 13 punts last night. 13 punts. A lot of drives stalling out. The 49ers had only 191 yards of total offense the entire night. And then, of course, you have some of the other storylines. Outside of neither quarterback throwing for over 160 yards, Matthew Stafford was the leading passer in this game, and he threw for $160. Brock Purdy threw for less than that. But then you have the other storylines. 49ers linebacker Devondre Campbell just quit. Just straight up refused to do his job that he gets paid millions of dollars to do because he has his feelings hurt that Dre Greenlaw is healthy and is playing over him, even though Greenlaw is a significantly better player than Devondre Campbell is. But Greenlaw made his, got back into the lineup, replaced Campbell in the lineup, was playing fantastic last night. I believe he led the 49ers in tackles. Got hurt again, and they needed Devondre Campbell to step up and fill in for him in the third quarter. And he said, nope, not going in. Asked after the game, Kyle Shanahan said, nope, that's what he said. Didn't want to play. Didn't want to go in. And then they sent him to the locker room, and that's going to be all you're going to see from Devondre Campbell in a 49ers uniform, pulling off that stunt. And it is kind of refreshing to see some of his teammates talk about how bogus that was. I think Trevarius Ward, fellow Middle Tennessee State alum, called it a sucker move, and that was some sucker stuff. And I agree. I absolutely agree. My fellow Blue Raider and I are on the same wavelength. That is sucker stuff, man. But he just quit in the middle of the game. A total crash out. Your reigning NFC champ, who took last year's Super Bowl to overtime, completely crashed out and leaked away any chance they had at maybe weaseling into the playoffs. And this has been one of the biggest disappointments in all of the National Football League. And you can almost kind of say that the Niners season was doomed from the start. This is one of those weird train wrecks that you just can't look away from. At the beginning of the year, your first-round draft pick, wide receiver Ricky Pearsall from Florida, has to miss some time because he got shot in the chest during an armed robbery. But he fought back. He came back. But that ended up being maybe a little more of an omen than I think some people would have expected for this season. Within a couple hours of kicking off their season against the New York Jets on Monday Night Football, it was announced Christian McCaffrey was out indefinitely. No one knew he was hurt. No one knew he was nursing any type of injury. The last we saw from McCaffrey, he was, running the ball well, scoring touchdowns, passing for touchdowns in the Super Bowl. No one knew there might have been an injury. But not was it just an injury. It was near the Achilles area. And it might have been a little more serious than they let on. They really didn't tell anybody, including anybody outside the organization. Jordan Mason was told days before the game, the running back that filled in for McCaffrey, has also since been hurt and is, I assume, out for the year or out for an extended amount of time, was told days before anything was announced about McCaffrey's injury that he would be playing. And then, of course, Jordan Mason spills the beans when he's asked after the game when he was told. He was truthful about when he was told. And then that insinuated that the 49ers were not revealing injuries on the injury report, which is a big no-no in the National Football League. You can see how the season started for the Niners. Even though they won that game on Monday Night Football, and Jordan Mason was one of the best stories in the league for a week, you still have the lingering thing with Ricky Pearsall over you, the lingering trouble potentially of hiding an injury to your best player who only got to play in 2 or 3 games this season, got hurt again. It's been an absolute dumpster fire for the 49ers this year. Oh, and just to go back to last night too, I don't want to miss out on this fun stat right here. The 2 best wide receivers in the game, the 2 biggest draws at wide receiver between Deebo Samuel and Cooper Kupp, combined for 3 catches for 16 yards. Ask me how many of those were Cooper Kupp's. Elijah, how many of those were Cooper Kupp's? 0. He did not have a catch or a yard. All 3 catches and all lucrative 16 yards were Deebo Samuel's. What happened last night was an atrocity to football. And the weather in San Francisco was about as nasty, if not nastier, than the San Francisco season crash out that we saw on live television. The Rams won the field goal fest. To their credit, they actually doubled up the 49ers in the field goal fest. They made 4. The Niners made 2. So for you mathematicians at home, the Rams win 12-6. But there's good football being played this weekend. Bowl season is finally here. We're finally getting into some playoff football, and we are a week away from the first ever 12-team college football playoff. Indiana Notre Dame will actually be kicking off a week from tonight. There's a whole lot to get into, a whole lot of interesting storylines, including a certain player in the transfer portal, back in the transfer portal, who has been in there so many times, he can probably earn some frequent flyer miles. If the transfer portal had a rewards program, well, this guy ain't buying anything from the portal ever again. He's been there pretty frequently. I'll tell you who that is and a whole lot more when the postgame show continues. It's one of the most underrated weekends in college football. It's not a full slate of games, but we have a pretty good slate of football being played, and the most prestigious award in the entire sport will be given out with the Heisman Trophy. And I wanted to lay out some facts. This morning with Preston Thorne on the early game, I kind of got to stump for my guy Ashton Jeanty a little bit. I do think that he is the best player in college football. Travis Hunter, a very close second. Travis Hunter does a ton on both offense and defense, and he'll be the best player in the draft. Whoever gets the number one pick, I think, is going to be taking Travis Hunter, and it's not going to be any surprise. He is a remarkable talent, and he's going to be the Heisman winner. I think I want to go ahead and at least prepare everybody. When the odds and the gambling odds are that high, they usually know something in terms of how a lot of the voters voted, and I think it's going to be a pretty sizable win for Travis Hunter. But the season Ashton Jeanty had cannot be overlooked, and I think he was a deserving Heisman winner. When I go back and look at the end of the season, now that his season totals are done, and compare it to every other Heisman Trophy winning running back since 1998, it's so hard to look at what he did and not say that that's a one of one season. And I chose 1998 because that's the BCS era, right? And I think the BCS era was kind of the introduction into the modern era of college football. And the only running backs to win the Heisman since then was Ricky Williams in 98 with Texas, Ron Dane with Oklahoma in 99, Reggie Bush in 2005 with Southern Cal, Mark Ingram in 2009 with Alabama, Derrick Henry in 2015 with Alabama. So Ashton Jeanty this year has already gotten the top 4 all time in terms of yards rushed in a single season. So he's got more yards than all of these fellas do. So disclaimer, right? The second closest, because Jeanty's right now at 2,497 yards. The closest is Ricky Williams at 2,124. 300 plus yards more than Ricky Williams did in his Heisman season. He's got more rushing touchdowns than all these guys. He's got 29 on the season. Derrick Henry had 28, and Ricky Williams had 27. And in terms of yards per game, I mean, he blows it out of the water, right? He's averaging 192 yards a game. The closest that any of these players had in terms of just raw yards per game stats would have been Ricky Williams at 100. Actually, he was at 192. So he was at the same one. Him and Ricky Williams had the same amount of yards per game. And he played an extra game. But man, and also in terms of yards per carry, Ashton Jeanty's at 7.3. The only player who had more in this list was Reggie Bush at 8.7. Reggie Bush actually picking up almost 9 yards a carry is freakish as well. He just didn't have to carry the ball as much because they also had Lendell White in that backfield, and Reggie Bush picked up a lot of yards through the air. Reggie Bush was a very special talent, very deserving of that Heisman. But he has more yards than all of these running backs. Trails only Reggie Bush in yards per rush. More touchdowns than all of them. And is picking up 5.48 yards after contact per rush. When I was digging through Ashton Jeanty stats, I wanted to find the one that I think blew my mind the most. The one that I read it and almost couldn't believe it. And that might be the one. That Ashton Jeanty, after first contact, was still picking up almost 5.5 yards per carry. Ricky Williams was at about 5.5 yards per carry in general. Regardless of contact, was picking up 5.5 yards per carry his Heisman Trophy winning season in 1998. Ashton Jeanty, if you only counted the yards he ran for whenever he was contacted, was picking up 5.5 yards per carry. If you only counted the yards that Ashton Jeanty picked up after contact this year, he would still be the leading rusher in college football. Because Marion Hampton from North Carolina was second in the country, a little over 1,600 yards. Ashton Jeanty, after contact, has picked up 1,889. He's almost picked up 2,000 yards just after contact. And when you look at season-long missed tackles forced numbers, one of the best at forcing missed tackles in college football is Arizona State's Cam Skattebo. And I think we saw his talents firmly on display in the Big 12 championship game. On the season, Cam Scadaboo has forced 89 missed tackles. That's a lot. Forcing 89 missed tackles is no easy feat. Ashton Jeanty has forced 134. Ashton Jeanty is forcing 10 missed tackles a game. He also has 35 rushes of 15 or more yards. And his 192 rushing yards per game would rank him 28th nationally if he was a team. Meaning there are only 27 teams in college football, teams, not players, 27 teams who have rushed for more yards per game this year than Ashton Jeanty. To give you an idea, South Carolina had a really good rushing season, especially towards the end of the year when Lenoris was picking up a lot of yards in the ground and Rocket Sanders was hitting his stride. They were picking up, for the entire season, 188 yards per game. Again, Ashton Jeanty by himself was picking up 192. Again, I don't think he wins the Heisman because there's one big thing that's going against him, and it is playing for Boise State. And part of me wonders, in a year in which no quarterback really took the award and ran with it, Cam Ward's probably going to finish third in voting, and he led the country in touchdown passes, had arguably the best touchdown pass interception ratio, threw for well over 3,000 yards, had a phenomenal season at Miami, and had him within a game of making the college football playoff. But really, his performance, and Dylan Gabriel at Oregon, who is a finalist, has no shot at winning it, and I was actually surprised he ended up being a finalist anyway, but he's a finalist in New York, are the two quarterbacks, and it's clear that those two quarterbacks will finish behind Hunter and Jeanty in voting. But when you look at the hurdles, being a running back is one, but also being a defensive player / offensive player for Hunter is also one for him. But Travis Hunter was on TV a whole lot more too. The Deion Sanders effect is real. And there's a reason that Colorado had more eyeballs on him than maybe any other team that's not in the SEC or Big Ten. They were a national story, have been for the last 2 years. Have been the love them or hate them, you're going to watch them team in college football the last 2 years. Boise State kind of moves in silence. Lil Wayne would call them a real G. They do move silently because they're playing on Fox Sports 1. They're playing late at night. They're playing in the Mountain West. And group of five players don't win the Heisman, right? It's very rare. The last time a player came from what was at the time a group of five school to win the Heisman was 1990 when Ty Detmer won it as the quarterback at BYU. But as everybody knows, the BYU is no longer a group of five school. They are in the Big 12, making them a Power 4 conference school. So if you go back and look at Heisman winners, the last time that there was a Heisman winner outside of the modern Power 4 conferences, it's when Roger Staubach won it in the 60s at Navy. So you have the running back factor, a position that has been increasingly devalued over the course of the last 10 years in the analytical era. You have the fact that he's playing at Boise State in a group of five school closer to the West Coast, where his games are late at night. They're on FS1. They're not really drawing the eyeballs that a Travis Hunter in Colorado have been drawing this year. It makes me wonder that if Ashton Jeanty wore an Alabama uniform and put up numbers, a third of these, would he have been talked about as the runaway winner? Like I think he would. I think the answer to that is yes. And before anyone jumps down my throat about, he did all this in the Mountain West, a weak conference. Sure. But if it was that weak, everybody would be doing it. No one else is doing it. And he did go to Oregon, the number one team in the country, who no one has beaten this year, and gave them 192 yards and 3 touchdowns in Eugene, picking up 7.7 yards a carry, forcing 8 missed tackles. And if you want to go back to what I was alluding to earlier about just the yards after contact, he had 111 of those against Oregon, the number one team in the country. Ashton Jeanty can ball, y'all. And I think it's unfortunate that he won't win the Heisman. But if I had a vote, he would definitely be mine. Quick update. I know right before the last break, Somerville was up 14-6 and Dutch Fork was driving. Well, Dutch Fork has since scored 2 touchdowns, got a 2-point conversion, and then just got the extra point on the last one. So with 1:20 left in the second quarter, Dutch Fork erases a deficit. They are up 21-14 in a state title game in Orangeburg right now. Give you more updates from Orangeburg as well as what to watch for on an underrated college football weekend. You're listening to the Postgame Show. Got a little bit of news here over the break. On Twitter is officially announced by Kyle Kennard himself that he will be declaring for the NFL draft. Penned a long, thought-out, very thoughtful letter to the university and to his coaches, whether it be here or at Georgia Tech. No mention, though, Alan Cole pointed this out as well on Twitter, no mention of the status for the Citrus Bowl. He does not say if he is going to play in it or not. So nothing official about Citrus Bowl status, but we do know that Kyle Kennard will be entering the NFL draft, as expected. That's not necessarily surprising news by any means. The Nagurski Award winner for the best defensive player in the country is all set to make himself some pretty good money in the National Football League. 803-404-6100. Call in to chime in. My man Wooly, as always, calling in to talk some ball. What's up, Wooly?
Hey, Elijah. Love the show, as always.
Thank you, sir.
Couple of quick comments, and I'll hang up. First off, I'd like to say 17-14,
Nice.
18 broken tackles. And then I'd like to say that the running back from Boise State was trailed by the North Carolina running back.
Oh, Marion Hampton.
Yep, from the almost competitive conference. I think that Boise deserves the trophy.
I love it. I'm excited to see what they do in the playoff. Thanks for calling, Wooly. I'm really excited to see what they do with the opportunity to play either SMU or Penn State. As much as I like to joke about Penn State and James Franklin's inability to win big games, because now it's become one of the funniest bits in college football, is that the man beat Ohio State once in 2015, hasn't beaten Ohio State since, hasn't beaten Michigan since they were good since. That was a lot of senses. But for the Michigan one, ever since they won that first Big Ten title with Harbaugh and went on a string of winning 3 straight, Penn State didn't get close to beating them in those 3 years. They got them when they were down, but that was it. But they haven't gotten Ohio State since 2015. An inability to win big games, haunting James Franklin. And it has become the eerie shadow over his career, but he's going to get a home playoff game against SMU where they should win because they are the better team. And I think SMU will give them everything they got. They'll throw the kitchen sink at them. But either way, whether it's SMU or Penn State that's playing in the Fiesta Bowl against Boise State, I think Boise State, behind that man right there, behind number 2, I like their chances of hanging around and being really competitive and maybe even winning that game to get themselves into the semifinal. I'm in a playoff pool. It's a bowl pick'em pool that does the playoff games. So you pick the playoff games as well. And I'm leaning towards Boise State beating Penn State in that quarterfinal game. Because James Franklin going James Franklin, and Boise State has one of the best players in all of the land. A lot of interesting stuff right there. But games this weekend, I do want to hit on the Celebration Bowl. And that's one that if you don't have on your radar and you fill the football void and catch a game at noon, get a nice noon kickoff in, Jackson State and South Carolina State in the Celebration Bowl should be a solid one. Only a 2.5-point spread. South Carolina State favorited, but Coach Barry, in his first year at South Carolina State, has taken them to a 9-2 record. They've won the MEAC and now have a chance to play for a Celebration Bowl title against Jackson State tomorrow. In his first year, following legends in coaching is really hard, right? We had the same type of discussion back in December of last year when it was announced that Nick Saban, or in January of last year, whenever it was announced that Nick Saban was retiring. And then the whole focus then went from, oh my God, Nick Saban's retiring, to who is going to replace Nick Saban at Alabama. The coaching search that was to ensue. And the kind of tag that following the guy, the legend, has on a job like that. There is that weird moniker. It's almost it is very daunting to be the guy that has to follow up the legend. Your leash is going to be a little shorter than it would for anybody else. You're going to be constantly compared to that coach. And I know it's a lot different at South Carolina State than it is at Alabama, but Buddy Pugh is a legend, a local legend, and a national football coaching legend. And Buddy Pugh's a guy that also won a Celebration Bowl in recent memory, just 2 years ago, 2 or 3 years ago. They took down Jackson State, coached by Deion Sanders, quarterbacked by Shedeur Sanders, and flanked on the wide receiver and cornerback position by Travis Hunter, the Heisman winner, the presumed Heisman Trophy winner. And South Carolina State beat them in a Celebration Bowl. Those are huge shoes to fill. And in 1 year, Coach Cherry has ascended into what I call the Curt Cignetti, quote, I win, Google me tier, right? It's one of the better moments in college football in the last year. Curt Cignetti in his opening press conference, or his introductory press conference at Indiana, was asked by a beat reporter what your sales pitch is to recruits, because he had to do a whole roster rehaul. Indiana had more players acquired in the transfer portal, 35 this past season, than any team in college football. He had to completely rebuild that roster, and he knew what was ahead of him. And so he was asked what the sales pitch is to be able to get those type of players to a school like Indiana. And all Curt Cignetti said was, I win. Google me. And, of course, they've done nothing but win. They went 11-1 this year. They're in the college football playoff. And Coach Barry is in that category. He wins. You Google him, you see he was a winner at Benedict College at the Division II level. He made the rise to Division I and is in the FCS and the MEAC with South Carolina State. And in year one, he follows up a legend, goes 9-2, brings some of his players with him. And now they win a conference, and they're playing for a massive, massive prize in Atlanta tomorrow. Again, that one's going to be on ABC at 12 o'clock. And the really cool thing, even like the local angle too, quarterback Eric Phoenix from Benedict College is having a fantastic year. 3 for 272 against Howard. 3 for 321 against North Carolina Central. The game that they had to win the MEAC, mind you. That, for all intents and purposes, was the MEAC championship on Halloween. They won it by 3, and that was in large part due to Phoenix's 321 passing yards. He threw for 341 against Delaware State. He's put up some fantastic numbers. He's a fun player to watch. Thrown for almost 2,500 on the season with 20 touchdowns, completing 65% of his passes. Eric Phoenix is a fun player to watch, man. The Savannah, Georgia native. Came here with Coach Cherry to kind of make it happen. So if you have nothing going on at noon and you want to see some really good football that means something, some football with some high stakes attached to it, especially local football, show your patriotism and get all in on Coach Cherry or Coach Barry and the South Carolina State Bulldogs team. I think they win. I know they've had some rest. Here's the weird thing about the MEAC too, is that the conference has kind of been relegated to only having 6 teams left. They've kind of been rated by other conferences, including the SWAC, which, for those who don't know what the Celebration Bowl is, it's the champion of the MEAC playing the champion of the SWAC every year. And the SWAC has taken some of the schools from the MEAC, including schools like Florida A&M, a team that actually beat South Carolina State in the first game of the year, 22-18, a really close game. Florida A&M was your reigning Celebration Bowl champions. But the conference has been raided, and now the SWAC has swollen to 12 teams, the MEAC down to 6. So their season ended on November 23rd, South Carolina State's did, with a 53-21 win over Norfolk State. So they've had some time off. They've only had to play 11 games. And Jackson State had to play a full 12-game regular season and a SWAC championship where they beat Southern. So they might be fresher, but even with that, I still feel pretty good about State pulling off that win. We'll wrap up hour number 1 coming up next with a transfer portal player who might be the most frequent flyer of any transfer portal player. I'll tell you who that is as we wrap up hour number 1 here on the Postgame Show. Final segment here of the opening hour of the postgame show. As a reminder, if you didn't hear it in the first segment, doing the first hour live, and then for the 4 o'clock hour, we'll be replaying the best of the postgame show this week. That will include a revisit of mine and Jay's conversation with outgoing athletic director Ray Tanner, talking about the hiring of Jeremiah Donati and the future of the athletics department here at South Carolina. And then in the 5 o'clock hour, we'll replay one of my favorite Brews days of the year. That was this past one, talking about the win against Clemson. Still not over, how fun that was. The college football playoff, talking about that. Talking about how exciting it is for this South Carolina football team to have a chance to get win number 10 on the season and do so in impressive fashion in a very highly touted bowl game in the Citrus Bowl in Orlando. So we talked with Ryan about that earlier this week. Very excited to get to play that back in case you missed it earlier in the week. But before we round out this hour, I wanted to get to this yesterday, just never got to it, right? When I had Jack in here, we got in some really good discussion talking about Mike Shula, the South Carolina football team, the steps moving forward. So, we didn't get to this for a good reason. But I wanted to end the live programming here with this, because there is a legend right now, in a good way or a bad way. That really is depending on your point of view. But TJ Finley has entered the transfer portal once again. Why is that significant? Well, because this guy has a chance to pull off one of the more impressive feats that we will ever see in college football. There will never be another TJ Finley, and I'm not saying this because he wowed on the football field. Now, coming out of high school, he was a top 20 pro-style quarterback recruit with fantastic size and a great build, right? At 6'6", 250 pounds, TJ Finley came from Louisiana and was destined to be the next great LSU quarterback. He graduated in 2020, so the fact that he's playing college football now isn't necessarily the surprising part, right? There are plenty of guys in this recruiting class that are still playing college football. DJ Uiagalelei, one of them. Ethan Garber's one of them. Ethan Garber's also, and DJU, also on different schools than they started with. Carson Beck, still at Georgia. His status for the playoff is still TBD, up in the air. Jaden DeLaura still playing college football. Tate Rodemaker at Southern Miss right now. Will Howard at Ohio State. He'll be playing in the college football playoff coming up. Max Johnson will still have another year of eligibility because of the injury he sustained in the first night of the year when he was playing for North Carolina against Minnesota. Tyler Van Dyke, Drew Pine, Brady Cook, all these guys. So a lot of these quarterbacks, Will Rogers even, a lot of these quarterbacks in this recruiting class are still playing college football. That's not the abnormal part. And they're all going to be playing college football, a lot of them for at least maybe another year. This is kind of the last of the Mohicans when it comes to players with COVID years, right? Because their freshman seasons would have been the COVID year. So they're the last of a dying breed in college football, players with an additional year of eligibility that players before them never got to have. But this is what makes TJ Finley truly a unique type of player because of the opportunity he has ahead. And when I teased this earlier, I teased that he can make history. He is a frequent flyer of the transfer portal. He is the most transfer portal player that has ever transfer portaled. Cam McCormick was kind of that guy with eligibility, right? With 7 years. And Cam Rising is one of those players too, because Cam Rising can get an 8th year of eligibility if he wants, because he can get a medical red shirt if he so chooses to play college football one more year. But no one is quite as well traveled as Mr. Finley. He enrolled at LSU in 2020 and played the 2020 season. In May of 2021, he decides to hit the transfer portal for the first time. He stays in the SEC. He goes to Auburn. Plays at Auburn for only a year. Not a ton of success. And then in May of 23, gets in the transfer portal again. In the transfer portal, he is now going to be on school. Well, he's played at Auburn for 2 years. So May of 23, not May of 22. So he played at Auburn for a couple years. And then hits the portal again, goes to Texas State for Coach G.J. Kenny, who I'm really surprised wasn't up to take any other Power 4 job here in this cycle, because that guy will be a Power 4 coach one day. No doubt about that in my mind. But Finley goes to Texas State, has a really solid season. They are really successful at Texas State. They go to a bowl game, they win a bowl game. Well, TJ Finley in January of 24, as soon as that bowl game ends, is back in the transfer portal. This time, he goes into the Conference USA, the real Conference of Champions at Western Kentucky. He plays about 3 games this year, gets hurts his ankle, doesn't play the rest of the year. And now, on December 7th of this year, with an extra year of eligibility because of that red shirt, TJ Finley has entered the transfer portal once again. He is in the transfer portal for the 4th time. He is going to be on school number 5, assuming he doesn't go back to Texas State, Auburn, or LSU. 5 schools. I don't think we've seen that. I've been trying to find examples of other players who have been to more than 4 schools. You've seen a lot of 4-school guys in basketball, the occasional 4-school guy in football. Kevin Coleman, the receiver from Mississippi State, who's in the transfer portal right now, will be a 4-schooler once he finds his new school. But TJ Finley has a chance to do something even crazier than just playing at 5 schools. Most college football players' careers end after just playing 4 years. This man is going to be hitting up 5 different schools. And because of the red shirt this year, only playing 3 games for Western Kentucky before his season-ending ankle injury, he's got 2 more years of eligibility. So if he wants to reach optimal college football mercenary status, all he has to do is find a new home this year, find a new home next year, and he can possibly play for 7 schools in a collegiate career. I'm not saying I'm cheering for it, but I'm fascinated by it. Hour number 2, the postgame show. Conversation with Ray Tanner coming up.
We're rolling the best of the postgame show on a Friday afternoon, going back to Tuesday, I believe, when Jay Phillips and Elijah Campbell got a chance to have a conversation with still athletic director Ray Tanner, of course, coach leaving that post in January. So here is segment one of the conversation between Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell, and South Carolina athletic director Ray Tanner, right here. The best of the postgame show on the game.
3 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome aboard the postgame show alongside Elijah Campbell. I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. A lot to get to on today's program. Big honor for Kyle Kennard last night. Could be another one tonight. Shane Beamer makes the cut for Coach of the Year. Dylan Stewart will be back. I mean, we got a lot going on. We got some scheduling news. We got more on the bowl game.
Transfer portal news.
Transfer portal, yeah. If you didn't just hear us talking, Robbie Ashford has entered, but good for Robbie to go have one final season to try and start somewhere. Speculation, right? Hey, would you go play for Dow? We'll see. I have no idea.
I just want him to go where he's going to play.
Yeah.
I mean, his entire career, he has not had consistent starting playing time.
Yeah, and
I want that kid. I want him to go somewhere where he will get to be a starting quarterback for 12 games in a college football season.
I agree.
Get to do that at least once before your eligibility's all up.
Here's hoping for him. But we'll keep you updated on some of those things. Lots of portal news around the conference and the country as well. Lane Kiffin is talking. Joel Klatt believes there has been manipulation. And my computer just crapped out.
Oh, that's great.
All live radio right
All
here.
right.
Yeah.
Technology.
I have no idea what just happened, but my computer just went out.
I went back and listened to the Joel Klatt thing you mentioned about manipulation, and I was like,
We'll discuss.
Yeah.
Yeah, we'll discuss in just a bit.
I think it's a Captain Obvious thing.
As promised, and this is not going to be the last time. It may be the last time in his official capacity. But if it's the last time ever, then I will start to hold it against him and really badmouth the guy. And we don't need any of that because I'm a nice guy and he's a nice guy. He is the athletics director at the University of South Carolina. Coach Ray Tanner joining us for one of his regular visits. A, how you doing? And B, this will not be your last visit on this radio program, will it?
Well, are you going to invite me back in weeks to come?
Sure.
That's the key question.
Well, you always have an invitation. I think you've known that for years. You always are welcome on this program or you on any of our programs, but especially this one.
I could be more interesting, with my comments in the future versus being an athletics director. What do you think?
Well, we can certainly get into things, once you're out that we can't necessarily get into all the time. I would just recommend that you not go on with Bill Gunner. You can go on with Preston Thorne, but I would not go on in the morning with Gunner. It just it gets weird. He talks about his boat a lot.
It's always good to visit with you, so
yes,
I'm glad we get a chance to chat today.
We do have a lot going on, and we'll blend a bunch of topics today. But let's get into what's happening around campus right now. Let's start with how you feel about how this football season has transpired. I won't say roller coaster, really, Coach, although the first 6 games were 3-3, so a little bit bumpy, and then things just really took off. But rather than me sit here and tell everybody what happened, they know what the record is. They know what the results were. What did Ray Tanner think of all that?
Yeah, it's interesting because you go back to the comment you just made about being 3-3, and Coach Beamer, obviously, this is his 4th year, so I've been around him quite a bit in his tenure already, and he does a wonderful job. He's got a great staff, but something that stood out to me from the beginning, and a lot of people after the first game were like, well, we really didn't do as well as we had hoped. We didn't play great. The score wasn't indicative of what we thought it should be. But there's one thing that always stood out to me when I would pop in and visit at practice. It was always great. It was always upbeat. There was not a day that you felt like, well, we're coming off of a loss, we're coming off of a win. The energy's not here today. We're a little bit. It was really professional. It was consistent. It gave me a good feeling about who we were, and I felt that way at 3-3. But then things started to happen for us. They always say that the game will even out no matter what sport you play. If you respect it, play it the right way, do all the little things, you're going to get your due, and it's going to even out. And from 3-3 to 9-3, that's a heck of a run. And you always go back and say, wow, we could have gotten this game or that game, and 2 pick sixes are good, thing that haunt me for the end of the year here that I'd like to have back. But it's certainly an impressive campaign when you are 3-3 and you run the table like we did. I'm no different than the Gamecock fans that are so passionate. I think we're a playoff team. I think we're really good right now. I get the fact that the committee has to do a tough job. I've served on a similar committee in a different sport. It's not an easy thing, but if you ask me, are we one of the 12 best teams right now playing? I would say we are. Yeah, certainly you could use a metric against us or for us, but I would give you that answer, no question about it. But it's been exciting. I'm so happy. I go in the locker room after the game. I see the players. We got a lot of class young men on that team, a veteran group, great coaching staff, and couldn't be happier. Coach Beamer has already been named USA Today Coach of the Year, and maybe more to come. So that was my vantage point, and I'm excited because it doesn't always work out record-wise. We'd like to have another game or two, but it's hard. It's really hard, especially in our league. And now we're in a premier bowl game, and excited about the opportunity to go play on New Year's Eve against Illinois.
And Shane talked a lot about your role in securing that bowl game, and we got some information here at the station yesterday that said maybe you guys were a little nervous about what the conference would do in terms of bowl selection, and that maybe Jacksonville or Nashville was going to be your destination until things turned in your favor positively. And I want to come back around to the bowl, but you bring something up that I was going to get to later, but you've already brought it up, so let me just jump right into it, and that is your role as athletics director in lobbying for this football program with the CFP. We've seen Greg Byrne at Bama have some things to say. We've seen some other coaches and ADs have some things to say. What was your life like that week? And if I may, as a part B for you to answer all of this, how did you feel when your colleague, Ward Manuel of Michigan, who chairs this committee, basically said last Tuesday night, a week ago, the teams that are behind Alabama, basically anybody behind number 12, they're not getting in. They got nothing else they can do. So what was your role in all of that, in again, lobbying, if you will, for Carolina football?
Well, that's a tough question. I guess to go to your one point about Ward Manuel's comment, I mean, there's angst in that comment. I get it. I have a lot of respect for Ward Manuel and certainly the job that he had as being the chair of the committee. So that's what it is. I don't think we needed to have that conversation. What goes on in the room, I think you still have to address the entirety of a season on its face when you get to the end, because I've been there. And, even though, like I said, I chaired the baseball committee for a couple of years, and you have metrics galore. You also have, what do you see? And who do you want to play? Who do you not want to play? And who is the best right now? So I think that should come back into play, and I'm sure that it did to a certain extent. But we're not in. We're moving on, and we're looking forward to going down and playing in the bowl game in Orlando. And so you ask about my role. I don't. As you know, I don't in the public too much. I don't say a lot of things to be quotable. I don't like to be in the D1 ticker. I just do it a different way. But, Jay, you know me. I'm not quiet either. So I make sure that I represent who I am and our program. And I did that. Did it make any difference? I'm not sure it did or not. But I would be remiss personally if I didn't do it. And so I had conversations with everybody under the sun, in the time leading up to the bowl selection to see where we felt. The process. The citrus gets the pick, and then the pool of 6 is decided by the SEC. So we were in a great position. Why? Because we finished the way we finished. We have a tremendous fan base that will go watch us play and support our players. So many positives to speak of that, I was hoping that we would be perceived the way that it happened. Did I have conversations with a lot of people? I certainly did. Again, it is sort of spelled out for you. Citrus gets the pick. The pool of 6 comes out of the SEC. But that didn't stop me from talking to, honestly, probably every bowl person, CEO that we all talked about, that were possibilities and where we were, and people in the SEC office. I was tireless, somewhat probably annoying and aggravating, making phone calls and having contacts. But the reason that we're in the Citrus is because of the team that we have, our coach, Shane Beamer, our coaching staff, and the players that did a wonderful job, and the fan base that these bowl people know about. I think all those factors play into it. Wasn't anything I did, but I certainly didn't hesitate to make them aware in case they missed something along the way.
I want to circle back to Coach Beamer, too, Ray, and because after the Clemson win, that gave him the most wins of any Gamecock head coach after the first 4 years in program history. Obviously, there's been a good level of success, and not just this year, but when you first were talking to Shane about this job opening, this was a pivotal hire that you had to make. What about his vision then that he discussed with you in these early talks about the program that he had is starting to come to fruition now that you've seen it 4 years in?
Oh, I go back to our initial interview, and Chance Miller was with me at the time. As you know, he's the athletics director down at Coastal now, and he was. We actually met in Atlanta. He was so well prepared. He actually provided an iPad for each of us to follow along with his presentation. And interviews are what they are for me. I mean, they count, they're important, but it's not the all end all. I think you have to look beyond the surface of an interview. And, obviously Shane was here during the Coach Spurrier era. We knew him well. We followed his career. The lineage was there. I really believed in him as a person, as a coach, and his future. And he's only 4 years in. So I expect it to be a very long runway for him, and he works at it tirelessly. He's a great family man. He balances work life better than anybody I've ever seen in my life, and he's so good at what he does and so genuine, and it's evident. And only in his 4th year, I say only, that's still somewhat young in a coaching tenure. But certainly I believe in the runway that he's going to have is going to be really special. But, everything's in place. He does it the right way. And, we're in a good place right now. No question about it.
Are you going to go to Disney World at all while the team's down there?
Jay, probably, true confessions, I probably will. I know that, you can be an adult, but you got to have a little child in you as well, don't you?
Oh, listen, I'm a Disney geek. I freely admit it. That's why I'm asking it, because if I'm not sure what the Phillipses are doing yet. But if not, then I'll have to live vicariously through those that do. So I was trying to encourage
Elijah.
I might
see you there. Yeah, I might
to get over to
there.
Epcot for New Year's Eve, because it's a show. I tell you, I've been a couple times. We got a lot to do with Coach. We'll get into a little bit more on what's going on around football, around the conference, around the country, fall sports, and so much more to do. Coach Ray Tanner joining us here. You're listening to the Postgame Show.
This is a special best of the postgame show for the week. We've re-racked the Ray Tanner conversation with Jay Elijah and the coach from Tuesday. Segment 2 is coming up on the best of the postgame show right here on The Game.
In case you missed it from earlier this week, Jay and I had a conversation with the outgoing athletic director, Ray Tanner, talking about the future of South Carolina athletics, the very successful football season, and a whole lot more. Again, in case you missed it, we're replaying it for you here in this hour. Here's segment number 2 of that conversation.
18 minutes after 3 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back into the postgame show. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you, joined on the guest line by the outgoing athletics director at the University of South Carolina, Coach Ray Tanner, who has made many visits, and he's already promised that he'll be back. And he's going to tell colorful stories that won't get him in trouble with his peers or the board or Dr. Amaritis or anybody else. Well, he didn't really promise those things. That's just me kind of expounding upon what I thought was there. I don't want to bury the lead, and we will not, wax nostalgically with you too much. But there is an incoming athletics director. His name is Jeremiah Donati. I don't know what role you played in any of that process, but I'm sure you guys have had a chance to meet and discuss. And he was very upfront in saying what I am taking over is not a fixer-upper. I would just like your thoughts on what you have taken from Jeremiah as I said in my tweet about having you on, as you pass that AD baton.
Interesting, Jeremiah and I had never met. Now we have a common close friend, ironically, so I felt like I knew him a little bit, and he felt the same way, so we did have a chance to visit when he was here. And then last night, I think we were on the phone for over an hour going over a lot of things that he will transition into when he gets here, the 1st of January. But I do think he's a tremendous hire, a person that has been through a lot in a short period of time. And Chris Del Conte was his mentor, who's the AD at University of Texas now. And I think that what he brings with his ability from an external side, and certainly as a law degree as well, and a program like TCU has been successful. So I think it is a tremendous hire by Dr. Amaritis, and will be an asset to the university once he gets here. And I will certainly be available if there's some things I can help him with. He is coming, from a place that he doesn't have any roots here, and I'll be more than happy to do that. But certainly he will become the athletics director, also in another role, but I'll be available. But I'm excited for him. I know he's got tremendous energy about getting here and getting underway, and that's what led to a long phone call last night. That we just went from one thing to another, but looking forward to having him here.
What, when you... Well, let me rephrase my question here, because I'm not saying this because you're on the air. Elijah will back me up. We spoke about this even before Jeremiah was officially announced. The coaching roster you're leaving him is in excellent shape. Most of the clubs on campus have made the NCAA tournament. Football got really close to the playoff and is playing in a Premier Bowl game. I know Tony's team didn't make the NCAAs, but men's soccer had its best season in nearly a decade. I know you're happy with that, proud of that, but what signal do you believe that sends to everybody about where things are for Carolina athletics right now?
Well, I do think we're in a good place, and Jeremiah recognized that. I think it made it probably attractive. He had been a young athletics director in my mind that had been sought by some other schools too, but to be able to come into the SEC at a place like ours that is not a fixer-upper. We are in a good place. It gives him an opportunity to come in and focus on the things that are going to be critical in the next few years. When you talk about revenue share and NIL still going to exist, but it's not like he has to make a lot of coaching changes right away and address some things that could be problems at other schools. So I think it is a little bit of an advantage for him, and it's a tribute to the coaches that we have here, the administrators, and the people that I get to work with, that we are in a good place, and I think that will help him once he gets here.
Ray, you mentioned his background, and it's a little different than a lot of athletic directors across the country. Maybe might even be a trend that we start seeing in the future of guys who maybe been on the agency side, which he has been for a little bit. But what about that background kind of makes him uniquely fit for a Power 4 athletic director position, or one that's in the SEC where where you're constantly in an arms race and we have so many challenges facing collegiate athletics today?
Well, I think that, certainly there's some reasons for his talents to kick in at that point. We were discussing a contract last night about one of our coaches, and he made a comment that was more like a lawyer comment versus an athletics director or a coach comment. And I go, well, hold on, being a lawyer, you have to play both sides. So I think that's a good advantage for him that he can bring to the table. But I think he does bring a tremendous skill set to our university, and will be an asset, as I said before. And I think it's great to have someone like him. And he's been around successful programs. He's not a person that you'd say, well, he's a different type athletics director. He certainly understands, what it's all about at the collegiate level and where he's been at TCU. And like I said, his mentor is Chris Del Conte down at Texas, and he's been around a lot of really outstanding people. So the skill set that he has, I think, will be great for our university.
What, let's say the last year for you, and as, again, you transition now to the school transitions to Jeremiah, what do you see as not necessarily the biggest obstacle, but the biggest concern? What things blend in? I mean, we know some of the obvious ones, but from your vantage point and South Carolina's specific vantage point, what do you see as maybe job one for him, if that's a fair question for me to ask you?
Well, I don't know if it's job one, but I think that in the evolution phase that we're in right now in intercollegiate athletics, and it's no different here than any other Power 4 school. But, for our position, we're just in the midst of doing a stadium renovations at Williams-Brice that will provide more premium space. What else does it provide? It could provide significant revenue for us as we move forward. It's going to be critical in revenue sharing. And he's been a part of 2 projects at TCU, so he has some familiarity. We have a great staff, and Chris Rogers that have been through it here, and Jeff Crane, who's been through it as well, that I think it'll make a great team. But generating revenue as we go forward, the challenges are greater than ever, and we have really good facilities. Thank goodness we're not in a position that a lot of things have to be built or fixed. We certainly can make improvements, but we're not in a terrible place as far as facilities are concerned. It's actually pretty good. But the challenge to continue to generate revenue at a high level is going to be paramount. And I think that's one of the things that he'll look at, and he'll realize that you got a tackle coming in the door. But everybody's facing it. We might be a little more poised because we have gotten phase 1 to move to Williams-Brice to start a project, and the land use that we talked about, the public-private opportunities around the stadium. There's some great opportunities here.
Have you already, or if not, when do you anticipate taking him to eat at the Kingsman?
Well, I'm probably going to test him a little bit. He's a lot of fun. We cracked a little bit at each other already, and I guess the first thing I said in the conversation last night, I had to bring up Coach Staley's game down at TCU on Sunday. I had to bring that up, and he's quick. He's like, whoa, it's a we thing here. It's not. I mean, he's a Gamecock now, so he was quick. I was testing him a little bit, but he was good. But I'll take him to a few places around town to orient him. It was funny last night. We were talking about, the different things. Where do you go? Who's your doctor? I said, Jeremiah, we'll get all that worked out. There's people. We got people that will take care of you. So it's all good.
Yeah, we need to get him some shrimp and grits, Coach, and some things. I don't know how many. Texas is certainly southern, but it's Texas. So, and he's been in Texas a long time, and he's got a West Coast thing too, right? So we need to get him some low country built into the diet as well, right?
Oh, he's going to adjust and he's going to adapt. We're not going to give him an opportunity otherwise. So he's going to be one of us quicker than later.
A lot more to do with Coach Tanner. We'll get into some of the other business going on around campus. A whole lot more. Ray Tanner with us here on this Tuesday afternoon. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell. It's the postgame show.
More of mine and Jay's conversation with Coach Tanner coming up after this. From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. A few accidents to get to that are causing some issues on the roadways. We have plenty of them. So we'll start with one on 77 northbound over at US 21 and exit 24. That's got the left lane completely blocked. We have more accidents on Assembly Street near Calhoun Street, Fort Jackson Boulevard at Divine Street, Hardscrabble Road near Lee Road, Hugh G. Street near Blossom Street, Highway 1 at Augusta Road at Columbia Avenue, 20 eastbound at Two Notch Road and exit 74, 20 westbound at South Carolina 6 near exit 55, Old Tamar Road at Coon Road, Rabin Road at South Carolina 555 and Farrow Road, Veterans Road near Britton Lane, and on Zimmelcrest Drive at Broad River Road. Continuing the conversation with outgoing athletic director and baseball coaching legend here at South Carolina, Ray Tanner. Jay Phillips and I earlier this week caught up with old Coach Tanner and got his thoughts on Jeremiah Donati, the future of South Carolina athletics, and a whole lot more. Here's the third segment with Coach Tanner.
We are talking with Coach Ray Tanner on this Tuesday afternoon. Welcome back in. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell with you. We have covered the football season, the bowl destination, got some of Coach's thoughts on how the final CFP rankings came out and some stuff like that, and also now transitioning towards a new athletics director, as Jeremiah Donati of Texas Christian was announced last week by Dr. Amaritis and Thad Westbrook, the chair of the board. And Jeremiah will begin his job as AD coming up at the first of the year. And I know, Elijah, you got a few other things that kind of continue on that vein.
Yeah, certainly. And Ray, I think you know better than almost anybody else that, in the SEC, things are won on the field, but to prepare yourself to win things on the field or on the court, you have to be really competitive in a fundraising and an NIL space. And with the law that was passed this year and everything that we've been discussing since you come on the show with us, how do you kind of feel about the infrastructure of the athletic department and the NIL space that he is inheriting coming into the job?
Well, as you know, July 1st it changes when we head into revenue share, assuming the settlement is accepted on April 7th, I guess it is. So it could change. But this past year, with our Gamecock Club situated as we have, a credit to our staff and Wayne Hyde and the Gamecock Club staff, we've done a really good job. I think that our players would tell you that things have worked out really well for them, and maybe that did translate on the field. I think the locker room was great, and maybe you hear things at other places. Maybe the locker room isn't great. Does all that play into it? I don't know, but certainly didn't see it here. So we're in a good place. Jeremiah is inheriting a good situation coming in. I think there's going to be some tweaks and changes, not because we're not doing it the right way, just because it's going to evolve into a different look as you go into the next July 1st to June 30th year. So there will be some changes there, but we're poised to be successful as we have been on the field. I think just because you do things right doesn't guarantee you a lot of wins, but I think if you position yourself well, you do enhance your opportunities, and I use that word more than anything is position. And whether it's a team or whether it's what you're trying to do administratively, if you're in the right position, your opportunities to be successful are greater. And I think that is the case and has been the case for us during this change in intercollegiate athletics with NIL. Then it will shift, if everything stays on track, to revenue sharing, and we'll be in a good place to be successful there as well.
Coach, I'll put you on the spot a little bit. I'm sure you can handle this, but what's most surprised you, up or down, about what you've seen across the state when it comes to NIL? Not so much the law, perhaps, but just, is there anything like, oh, you know what, we're better off here than I would have anticipated, or, oh, okay, there was a place where I didn't necessarily see something like that coming. I'm not sure what it may be, but a lot of times when things are brand new, even if somebody like you who's been in college athletics his whole career might go, I didn't see that one coming. And again, could be good or bad.
Well, I'll just say this. I've been a proponent of student athletes receiving compensation. I never knew exactly what the number should be. We started out with cost of attendance, as you know, a number of years ago, and then the Austin money kicked in 3 years ago, I believe it was, and now there's a different blend coming. So I think that's the way it should be. The dollar values, like revenue share, we kind of know what that's going to be if we stay the course with the $20.5 million in year one. We kind of know what the division is going to look like potentially. The thing that gave me angst is things that I don't know were accurate, but when you hear about a particular athlete or school or an individual getting a certain amount of money, sometimes it became a head scratcher, as that's not a market value situation. That's not the way. It's a little bit excessive, if you will, when you hear a big number. I believe they should be compensated. And I believe that, when you talk about revenue share, NIL is two different things. So NIL is going to be market value based, and it'll be monitored. Whatever company that it ends up going through, there will be a clearinghouse. So there's opportunities that the playing field becomes more level. Again, some of those schools that might have given out a lot more money in the NIL space didn't necessarily win more. So, that would be interesting if you could get an accurate study. I don't know that we'll ever get that, but that's kind of the way I see it. I guess the biggest thing for me was when I heard a significant number, that an athlete might have received. That was where you feel like that's not exactly a market value proposition.
What are your conversations like with the, I guess, Olympic sport coaches when it comes to revenue share and name, image, likeness? It's easy for any of us to think about a star football player, basketball player, et cetera, or a kid on the baseball team who has a chance to be a first or second round pick or something like that. But what are those conversations like? Because I would imagine, at least on a pound for pound basis, Coach, they're just as serious in terms of their roster construction.
Interesting question, and I think that it's very positive in many ways. So first, let me address the NIL opportunities or revenue share. NIL opportunities exist for all student athletes, male or female. The revenue share probably isn't going to reach the Olympic sports. There could be an occasion where an Olympic sport gets, some share, but across the country, it's not going to be a significant part of revenue share. NIL could be, but here's where the big kick is. If you study the revenue share and you talk about a portion for football, basketball, men's and women's basketball, and maybe another sport, baseball, or whatever the case may be. One of my colleagues said they were going to invest some into gymnastics. But the good part, if you followed it closely, there's a $2.5 million distribution for scholarships, minimum. So the Olympic sports across the board at most schools and here at the University of South Carolina are going to receive more scholarships. Now, you can remember, and I don't mind using baseball, even softball as an example. Baseball is 11.7. I thought we would never see an increase. Well, it's going to be increased significantly, how many scholarships they get. And softball as well. And other sports are going to fall in there and get the opportunities too. I think every sport that we offer right now will receive some scholarship increase with this new scholarship cap. So that's a good thing. They might not be getting the dollars, but they're going to get more scholarships to recruit with.
I want to follow back up on something you mentioned earlier on Jay's last question, Ray, and talking about, hearing things that are way over what would be market value for certain athletes. And I think that's kind of our biggest problem in the NIL space as we have it, is the lack of transparency, because so much of what, a market could be in this space is fueled by innuendo and rumor. But what do you think would be a best way to kind of establish what an actual fair marketplace value would be for a lot of these athletes, whether they be incoming high school prospects or collegiate athletes?
Well, that's where the clearinghouse comes into effect. Whoever that entity may be. And, I'll just throw out two names that I know about. Not necessarily it'll be either one of these in our case, but you're talking about Deloitte or PricewaterhouseCoopers. Whoever monitors that, they have the expertise, the professionalism, and all the components and data points that they need to determine that. So you do level the playing field once again that, somebody gets, we only get $300,000 for making an appearance. That's not going to work. That's not going to be approved. So it's going to be a market-based opportunity that, again, puts it in perspective. And you mentioned the transparency word, so that would be significant as well. If we are at that point, I think it's critical not to necessarily share everybody's name, but to share what different programs are going through and what the opportunities are when it comes to NIL opportunities.
We got more to do with Coach Ray Tander here on this final visit of his as the athletics director at the University of South Carolina. So more to do with Coach when the postgame show returns. Welcome back in. 12 minutes in front of 4 o'clock on this Tuesday afternoon. Jay Phillips, Elijah Campbell, joined on the guest line by South Carolina Athletics Director Ray Tanner. And more to do with Coach here, including, what's next, like where he's taking Karen on an extended vacation and things like that. So we'll make him answer all that, and just hope she's not listening right now. Actually, I do hope she's
Citrus
listening.
Bowl. What do you think? What do you think? Citrus Bowl. Come on.
Oh, well, that's that. Yeah, but that's. I mean, I'm going to go out on a limb and say that that's not going to be everything that she wants in a vacation once you've rolled off the job. That's all I'm saying.
I'm counting that. I got to count that, Jay.
Yeah. Well, I mean, you've been married how long now? Because I've been married. I'm coming up on 28. I know you've been married longer than that, right?
Yeah, I'm over 30, maybe 30, close to 31.
Yeah. So I'm just saying. I mean, Orlando. I love Orlando. I love Disney World. I'm not knocking it at all. But perhaps the need for a passport could be in your future. That's what I'm talking about. But we'll see.
I'm not good. I'm not good with passports.
By the way, for everybody, the SEC coaches all conference team is out. Did you have a lot of fun when you got to vote as a baseball coach back in the day on this? Was it hard? Did you let Andrew Kiddick do it all? I'm kidding about that.
No, actually, and you mentioned Andrew Kiddick, who spent a lot of time with me. We love going through that and looking at the players and remember playing against them, but all the stats that they had and the kind of impact that they made for their teams. But we were, we fared well. I thought today with first team All SEC, we had 6 guys totally represented, but 3 on the first team.
Yeah.
And I'll start with Kyle Kennard, coming off of last night's the Bronco Nagurski Award. And, he comes out today at first team, as well as Nick Imanwari was on the first team, along with Kai Kroger. So we got three on the first team, and Rocket Sanders was on the second team. And then we had Lennar Sellers on the third team. I would say he should have been higher than that. And Simpkins was also on the third team for us. So we were well represented, and certainly guys that are very deserving. So it's exciting for us, and a lot of good things are happening. Let's keep it going.
It's a big deal for Lenoris. First team quarterback, by the way, was Jackson Dart. Second team quarterback was Quinn Ewers. So I certainly see where Lenoris fits in that, but that's a pretty big deal, Coach, that he's third team at this point, considering some of the quarterbacks in this league: Jalen Milroe, Nico Iamaleava, Garrett Nussmeier,
Carson Beck.
That's high praise for a freshman.
I can be biased, can I? I mean, he's my guy.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it's fantastic. And we've been talking a lot about, look, he's obviously not a Heisman finalist this year, and I don't know what the Heisman vote will look like if he gets any this year, Lenoris, but, next year we started off a conversation about a week or so ago, Elijah and I did, and like, well, it could be a dark horse, and then we kind of decided, it'll just be a horse. It won't just be just a dark horse. I think he's in the race. This won't be some 50-1 shot.
You know what would be interesting, and probably our coaches will end up having this done at some point, maybe after the season. How many times was Lenoris sacked that he wasn't sacked?
Right.
That you would look and you go, well, he just took a sack. Oh, no, he got out of it. Here he comes down the middle around the end. It was incredible the number of times it looked like he was going to be in the backfield for a loss, that he pulled the Houdini act and turned out with a positive run. It was incredible to me.
Double digits, I would say, just off the top of my head. So, but I'm sure somebody down there, somebody on the analytics team on Shane's staff knows exactly how many times.
He has forced 44 missed tackles this year per PFF.
Well, there's that, Coach. So.
Oh, he's hard to bring down.
That's solid double digits right there. What? Tell us before we get you out of here. And again, we'll wax nostalgically one day. I promise you. But what will you? I mean, yeah, I can sit here and joke about where you're going to take the missus and the family. And again, I know it'll be somewhere cool. But no, in all seriousness, what will you be doing? Will you take some time away? What roles will you have on campus, in the community, et cetera?
Well, just to be candid, I don't plan to take any time away. It's not in my DNA to do things like that. I'm not saying that you won't take a day off or have a weekend here and there, but I want to continue in a role that's significant. We have a new athletics director coming to town. Am I going to be in the way or present? No, I'm not. I'm not going to be. I will be in a position that, should I be needed, I'm going to be there. I'm going to assist Dr. Amaritis in any role that he deems necessary for me to contribute in, and would like to play a role in development, however that looks, if it's in athletics or on the campus side. So there's a lot of different ways that I see that I will be working, but I'm grateful, I'm humbled that I've been here as long as I have. I think 29 plus years now, in year 29, and I'm going to continue to work for a great university in a capacity and doing something that I truly.
That was our best of discussion with Ray Tanner earlier this week. Coming up for the final hour of today's postgame show, we'll replay our Brews Day edition, talking bowl games, college football playoff with Ryan Brewer, and a whole lot more. We'll do that for hour number 3. Coming right up. From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to that are causing some issues on the roadways, starting with one on Assembly Street near Calhoun Street, Fort Jackson Boulevard at Divine Street, Hardscrabble Road near Lee Road, Highway 302 at US 176, US 21, and Charleston Highway, one on 77 northbound at US 21 and exit 24, Rabin Road at South Carolina 555 and Faro Road, one near Coon Road, Veterans Road near Britton Lane, and lastly, one on Zimmelcrest Drive at Broad River Road. No 5 o'clock news today, but we do like to thank our sponsors at Integrated Media who sponsor that every day. That's the news, is that Integrated Media is awesome. We will, however, be playing our conversation from Ryan Brewer from earlier this week. Ryan Brewer joined us for Brews Day on a Monday, a little atypical, but there's a lot to get into, talking all things Gamecock football, the bid to the Citrus Bowl, the college football playoff. A whole lot to get into, Ryan, this week. One of my favorite segments each and every week. Here's how that conversation went.
Along with Elijah Campbell, I'm Jay Phillips. Appreciate you being with us. And if you were just tuned in the last couple of minutes, and you know it is a special edition of the Postgame Show today and a special edition of Brews Day, as our good friend Ryan Brewer, the former Gamecock, joins us here in the studio, typically on Tuesdays during football season. And we're trying to squeeze out as much time from Ryan as we can before we get into the holidays, and then we have to say goodbye to him until spring.
That's sad.
Yeah.
Yeah, I get kicked out of here. Last week I said I'd do a couple hours, and Jay's like, "All right, see you."
Well, I'm out.
Then I get bumped on Tuesday, and so I'm here on Monday.
What you have to realize,
didn't even know I was coming in. I just snuck in. Security's chasing me down. They're knocking on the door now.
I'm very regimented in what I do here, and so I just kind of did the typical sign off last Tuesday. And I
just kind of looked at you like, all right, see you.
Well, then I said, but then we could have had some fun with it. And then you were like, nah, I'm leaving.
Yeah. You just hurt my feelings. I'm sensitive, Jay.
Hurt people, Jay Phillips.
That's right. You know, Ryan, see, that's what Ryan does. Ryan is sensitive. What he does, he manifests all of that in one night a year as he scares small children on Halloween. And then the rest of the time.
Well, I can't play football anymore. Not that capacity or not any capacity.
Yeah, pickup football is hard.
So I can't go ahead and just everything I have and let it out on a football field. Right. What's your boy's name? Oh man, what's the Arizona State running back?
Oh, Cam Scattaboo.
Scattaboo. Now that guy, that's. Did you see him before the game? He's got his hands out and he's just bringing all the energy in.
Right.
That's how you play the game. You grab everything, all the energy, and then you just run through someone. First play, I can't do that anymore. So,
by the way, they looked really good the other day.
That kid's a bowling ball, man. He is so fun to watch.
They really beat Iowa State.
You beat the hell out of them. And it didn't help Iowa State started the second half with 3 turnovers inside their own.
That doesn't. Yeah, giving the team the ball, the other team the ball is not a good way to play, in my personal opinion.
Got comical. And
so
actually,
did he break more tackles than the Boise State guys? He over 20? Because on that one run, he broke 10.
Yeah.
Oh, I need to look. I'm going to pull that up, actually, the PFF numbers on how much he actually broke. Because that was pretty impressive.
Speaking of Ashton Jeanty, he had a nice game.
Yeah, only ran for 207 yards.
I was just talking with Ryan. We got a lot to get to, y'all, so we'll spend a lot of time on the Gamecocks in the bowl game. Carolina, a heavy favorite, at least early. Let's watch for roster depletion on both sides to see how that line moves. But the Citrus Bowl is it's a great bowl. I know Carolina fans really wanted to be in the playoff considering how the season ended, but didn't quite happen, and I think you understand why.
We'll get into all of those things for you, a little bit of hoops as well, a little bit later on. But Boise, I think a lot of Boise fans were, I mean, this is weird to say. I think they hoped they made the playoff. And then Ryan and I were just talking about it. I think they hoped that they were going to get a home game because, that would be somewhat of an advantage. And this, I've seen a lot of people complaining about this. Listen, I've said all along, Elijah can back me up. And even before I ever met Elijah Campbell, when this format was announced, I remember sitting, speaking of Elijah, I remember sitting on Radio Row at the Grand Hyatt Hotel in downtown Nashville, Tennessee.
Wonderful place.
With the wonderful Mr. Bill Hancock, former executive director of the College Football Playoff. And in that smiling face of his, when I asked, hey, shouldn't the top 4 seeds get home games? And he went, but they get a bye. And I still, to this day, I will contend, you should get a home game, man. A bye and then going to a neutral site might actually be, if not disadvantageous, at least not as much of an advantage because most of those teams, all of those teams played Saturday, while a lot of the other teams did not. A couple of conference losers in there. SMU made it. Penn State made it. Texas made it. That's it, right? Iowa State did not.
Iowa State did not.
So, no, wait, I'm forgetting somebody. SMU. Yeah, no, that's it. Okay, I got him. So I'd rather have a home game. But if I'm Boise, where are they? I forget which bowl they're. I mean, Boise's going to play. Okay.
Which they've historically never done.
Well, they like that, yeah. But they're going to get. Boise's going to play Penn State.
Have you seen James Franklin coach in big games? Maybe they get SMU.
You think they will?
I'm not putting it past them.
I'll be taking Penn State in that one for sure. Everybody that has a home game is at least a touchdown favorite. Whatever that's worth to you.
Yeah.
Whatever that's worth to you. But Boise probably would like what's Boise sit at? Like, it's not a mile. It's not like Denver, but it's like it's elevated and cold and a weird field. Like, there's a lot of things that can throw
pretty much
off.
That's the team that would have the most home field advantage.
I would think
out of
so.
all these teams.
I would think so.
I thought the home field advantage against UNLV was pretty prevalent.
Yeah,
because UNLV loves to go up and down the field. The go-go offense isn't called that because it's slow.
Yeah. Right.
I mean, they move.
Some teams want to say they have home field advantage, like we were talking about with Notre Dame or Indiana or whatever, but it's not that much colder there than it is here right now.
Right.
Now, and you're talking about maybe a Texas or Tennessee traveling, Clemson traveling if they're going up north. The cold here is the wet cold.
Yeah.
Yeah, the cold,
which is more miserable
right now, and that it's not like I mean.
How many times did you play in snow in high school? Serious question. How many times did you play? Did you?
Yeah, I did. But it was mostly playoff games, and I've had one that was -12.
Oh God.
And that was not home field advantage. That was no one wanted to play an advantage. Like I couldn't feel my extremities.
I didn't know you went to high school in Siberia.
Yeah, so
very nice.
We were playing UD, and it was on the turf that was like as hard as this floor right here, just carpet, and there was just a sheet of ice on it. And I ran a swing right out of the backfield, and I had wide open, catch the ball into the half. I'm a freshman, and I'm going in to score, and I'll hear the crowd go, "Oh!" I'm like, "What just happened?" While I'm running, I hear, but I look down. I don't have the ball anymore. I could not feel the ball. I could not feel the ball in my arms. I could not feel my arms. I couldn't feel anything. And the ball, and like the times it was slow mo. It still plays in my head. The ball just rolling out of bounds, and I'm watching the ball roll out of bounds as the clock just ticks to 0. And we could have gone in a half with the lead,
right?
And now I'm just like mortified. I can't feel anything. It was it doesn't matter where you're from.
I was going to say at that point that's not
it doesn't matter.
Either team is going to, if it's -12, I don't care how many times you've played in it, right?
But the point is, so there's multiple shows that I've done calling you all whatever pre-games, especially bowl games. I've been outside in Ohio with shorts and no shoes on, just like no big deal.
Right.
Now it's cold, but it's not. You can stand it. You can deal with it. Now when it's raining and cold or whatever, that's just a different story.
Yeah. And I was just telling you off air too, like Tennessee's going to Columbus. Okay. If Ohio State was going to Knoxville for the same game on the same date, December 21, A, it's going to be cold in Knoxville, and B, Ohio State would still be favored to win. Now, maybe not by as many points.
Yeah, they'd still be favored.
But they'd still be favored to win. So, does it matter? Sure.
But it does matter. I would say that if there's a way that we got into this playoff, if we had a home field game, that's a huge advantage.
Yeah.
Can you imagine Willie B in the college?
No, it'd be great.
playoffs?
I mean, any of them, Ryan, and that's my point.
I'd be an earthquake before the game.
That's why for these top 4 seeds, look, in 26, this has to change. If you are one of the top 4 seeds in this tournament, you got to play at home, man. That's just and you're going to have home games. Otherwise, let's do what basketball does and make them all neutral, or do what almost every other sport does and make them all on somebody's field until a championship. That's my opinion. But we'll touch on all that. We got plenty of time for it, but it's all out there. Again, Gamecocks taking on Illinois in the Citrus Bowl. That'll be a New Year's Eve kick instead of a New Year's Day game this year for the Citrus Bowl. 3 o'clock. South Carolina installed as 10-point favorites. Both schools come in at 9-3. I was not surprised South Carolina was favored. And again, I do think it will change. I even told Elijah this probably goes down to more like a touchdown by the time the game starts, just with opt-outs and a few other things here or there for both schools. But I was surprised that it was such a big spread to start with, considering both are 9-3 and both in the top 20.
Yeah, but I think I think you look at what South Carolina's done the last 6 games. They're saying, "Wait, this team's hot." Now, I would think they would start lower, just not knowing how many guys, especially on our defensive side, will maybe not play. I have no idea about Illinois' side.
Yeah, I'd be honest with you,
seniors or guys that that are NFL bound. I have no clue. The only thing I know is Steps there. I mean, that's about it.
Right.
So,
well, I texted our buddy Andrew.
So he may take this personal.
You know Andrew Kiddick very well. I just said it's the Andrew Kiddick Classic. So.
Yeah. So we do have some ties there, but they're not strapping it on. One's coaching, but they're not going to be on the field. So. But yeah, the spread, and you look at it, it's like, man, that just seems like a lot for a bowl game with very similar records. But I think they have to take into effect that we're hot.
Yeah.
The CFP didn't take into effect, but at least the bowl games will, and Vegas will.
Were you, Elijah, surprised at 10-point spread?
10-point spread, not really. I mean, that's going to change. I really don't take much into account of what the spread is when the game opens, because we still have transfer portal that is going to open up, and certain players for both teams are going to opt in and out for either draft reasons or, transfer portal reasons. We're not going to have a full picture of what the rosters are going to look like going into this game for another week and a half. I mean, we're going to get well into the bowl practices.
Yeah, I mean, you'd love to take Shane's what Shane's hearing from the players and take the word for it. But I
love that.
And it may be true. I hope it's true.
Right.
But at the same time, it never happens that way. I mean, these guys, they start getting agents in the ear or whatever and talking and really thinking about it. It's like, oh man, is this game worth it?
Especially on this defense.
But
there's a couple of dudes.
There are some dudes, but at the same time, this is a time to write your name in Gamecock lore, or be another 10-win, one of the few 10-win seasons.
It's the 5th.
And have a chance to where you go out as the best defense of all time type deal. Let's go make another statement out there.
Again, we'll break down the game a little bit more, and we got plenty of time to do that. Before we hit the break, though, one other gigantic piece of news over the weekend that I think caught a lot of people by surprise, and that was Dowell Loggins being named the new head football coach at Appalachian State. I'll be perfectly honest with you, man. Did not see it coming. No, it doesn't shock me that he wanted the job or that he got the job. He and his people and Shane and the folks over there kept this thing super quiet in the modern world.
Yeah, it smacked me in the face, too. It's like one of those, I found, Twitter right off the bat, and people texting, what's going on? It's like, I don't know. And App State's obviously a great place to coach.
Yeah.
And I don't know what his path, what he wants to do, if this is where he wants to be path-wise. But the biggest thing is you're leaving a, potential, if not a really high candidate, Heisman guy coming in. And that's where everyone's questions like, man, it's kind of weird that he's doing that. And in his press conference, Dow was awesome about, that was his hardest phone call he had to make, was to Lenoris, and saying how, that was a hard one, because he's recruiting them, gotten them here, got them to flip and all that. But then, they become tight. You spend
absolutely.
every daggone moment with each other pretty much when you're talking to the OC and quarterback coach and your quarterback. And I'm sure that was definitely a tough one, but you got to go where your heart and your mind desires, and that's one of those. I don't know him well enough to say, hey, this is what path is, but obviously he wants to be the head coach of App State.
Timing's everything, and again, clearly he and his agent made a push for this. To Brew's point, and we've talked about this before. I did a show in North Carolina yesterday with my buddy Mike Waddell. He asked me to do an emergency pod, give me your take. And he and Coach Collins were both in agreement with me, pound for pound. Now, not size-wise and budget-wise, but pound for pound. The most rabid football fan base of colleges in North Carolina is Appalachian State. This is a good gig.
It's a great gig.
It's a good conference, and But I talked about how Lenoris and Dowell, as Ryan said, are super tight. But again, timing is everything.
Well, it's the perfect time for Dowell to kind of cash in. We had the similar conversations about Clayton, right? I mean, what was the conversation about Clayton last year after the Florida game, where you kind of blew a 10-point lead in the fourth quarter? Defense looked really bad. The conversation was, is he back next year? And then you went from, is he back next year, to that same point next year, are you a top 10 defense in college football? That's the margin right there. If he wants to be a head coach, now this is the perfect time to throw your name in the hat for a lot of these openings. And then maybe you can use the momentum that you have to get you a really good head coaching job, or at least the best one that you can get, and striking while the iron's hot. What was the conversation about Dowell Loggins, even in this market, after the Old Dominion game? What was the conversation like after the Ole Miss game, when the offense wasn't looking too good?
Yeah, market value, is definitely skyrocketed. But is that market value? Again, it depends on where you want to go. Do I want to be a head coach with that market value, or is it worth, hey, maybe my OC, I want to be, just pay me more money here, knowing what I have in the pocket with the quarterback going. So he obviously made his decision. He wants to be the head coach, and I think he's one of those guys that you watch and listen to him on the podium. He's got that head coach speech for sure. Yeah,
it's a good opportunity for him, and now in the short term, who's going to call plays. And run the offensive practice, up until the Illinois game. And then, what does Shane do beyond that? So we've got a lot of storylines to get to locally, regionally, nationally. We'll touch on all of it. A special edition of Brews Day.
haven't seen them a lot, David. I watched a little bit of their game, either in a hotel or at home when they played Oregon. Maybe saw some of that game. They played somebody, I want to say they played either on a first game of the season, is maybe on a Thursday night or a Friday night or something, and I've seen them a little bit just on television, but haven't dove deep into their team. But obviously they're in a great league, a league that got, 4 teams in the playoff, and they found a way to be one of the best teams in that conference. So that we know they'll be tough, physical Big Ten football team.
That is Shane Beamer, not having seen a lot of Illinois. You know, coaches, if you don't play them, chances are a coach really hadn't seen you much. And that's not one where it's coach speak either.
No.
They don't have time.
Who are you sending out to scout potential bowl teams?
That actually surprises me. I thought Beamer watched every game, every I mean, even like D2 games. I thought he was watching them. I swear he's got doppelganger on doppelganger, and he's doing all these things, but I guess I was wrong.
Yeah, well, hey, we're all wrong sometimes, right?
Sorry, guys, got to cut the presser short. Mountain Union's on right now. We got to prepare just in case we play them. Just in case. You never know. Realignment's crazy.
Let me get, let's see, Illinois 9-3 on the season, if my computer will cooperate here. Again, South Carolina installed as a 10-point favorite in this game.
Rashard Mendenhall is pretty good.
New Year's Eve.
He's still there?
In Orlando. Not that I know of.
Juice Williams?
He is, 12th year.
Not that I know of, right.
Aurelius Ben get cleared for year number 14?
All right, let's see. Illinois lost to Penn State by 14, Oregon by 29, and Minnesota by 8. They beat their best win. They beat Michigan by 14 at home.
When they wore those sick throwback uniforms.
I got to tell you, and I guess, and this is not a slam, so don't anybody say anything. They beat Purdue, and everybody beat Purdue, right? They beat Purdue by a point.
Oh, they blew like
They had 2 overtime games, though, right? Nebraska and Purdue. So, a lot of these games they won are pretty close as well.
The game against Purdue, too, went to overtime, I think, and then they blow like a 3-touchdown lead in that. I'm looking that up right now. I want to say that one got really wacky.
It was, let's see, it was 24-3 at halftime. And then it was 27-20 going into the fourth quarter. And then Purdue outscored them in the fourth. And then, Illinois won in overtime by a point.
Yeah, the biggest lead had in that game. Let's see. I've got the scoring rundown here right now. It was 27-10 Illinois with 7 minutes to go in the third quarter.
All right. So
and then had a 14-point lead with 10 minutes left. Had a 12-point lead with 5 minutes left. And then was down by 3 with 46 seconds left.
I mean, we're all kind of learning on the fly right here. Like, I'll tell you right now, let's see.
I do remember that game getting really crazy.
They run for about 150 yards a game. It's pretty good.
Luke Altmaier had a pretty solid season.
Yeah, they throw for just over 200 yards a game. But I mean, running for 150 a game is pretty good.
21 touchdown passes, 5 picks for Altmaier. Was a former Ole Miss quarterback.
Yeah,
transferred in.
They don't have any real standout. Aiden Lawfrey is their leading rusher at 522 yards. He gets 6.4 per. He tried to say. And Josh McCray, 495 yards. He gets 4.8 per. So those two guys combined for over 1,000. So they split time. And Luke Altmaier, 2,543 yards, completes 61% of his passes, 21 touchdowns, 5 picks. And opponents, so here's a number for you guys. He was sacked 31 times this season.
That kind of makes me a little hungry if I'm a DN. Thinking about
that sounds delicious.
Going in or not.
That's a lot. That's a lot of sacks.
The whole D line's got to look at that and be like, let's go one more time.
Yeah,
one more time.
I got one more in me.
But like we said, I mean, for now, and I'll be careful how we talk about all these things. The only transfer names we've seen leaving South Carolina football have been guys that we're not going to see playing time, and they know that, and I think they're all leaving on good terms.
And I think that's what the portal was meant for.
Right. Well, that's always what transfers typically have been, right? You just want to go play. Now, in this day and age, obviously it's a little bit different. the exams are this week, so guys are going to be focused on academics primarily.
Some of them.
Some of them. Yeah, well, you better be. You should be, and I think they will. Again, some more than others, sure. But, maybe by next week, I don't know. Again, we're not naive. There will be overtures to some of the bigger names on this team. Also, some of the bigger names on this team that have eligibility remaining, like a Nick Emmanwori or a TJ Sanders, guys like that. Ryan, there can be conversations, but there'll need to be conversations with the school, with the draft advisory board, with their families, all that kind of stuff to determine, what returning might look like relative to not and things like that. And I don't know how you feel. I would always say and I'll just use Nick as an example. If the advisory panel is saying, listen, you're outside shot at a day one, almost definitely a day two in April, I think I'm going to go take my chance and go make some money playing football.
Yeah, and I would say, I don't know, how long has McCaffrey been in the league?
A while now. Coming up on, let's see, I want to say 2017 is when he.
Yeah, he was a 17 guy.
Yeah.
So, yes, that if you would have said it then, I would probably smack you.
Right.
Because that's how I felt then. I was like, you're leaving your team, you're doing all this stuff, but I've actually changed the thought process on this, and the same deal. It is your team. I'd love to play for them. I'd love to get one more game back right now if I could.
Sure.
But at the same time, if you have this opportunity to make a ton of money in the NFL and you're risking it for something that's, maybe, this is a time that younger guys can get some more playing time, whatever, I understand that. But I think it's more like team decision. If you're not ticking off, hey, guys, you're cool with this? Yeah, I'm cool with that.
All right.
Type deal as well. But it's bowl games now are starting to come to where this is where the younger guys get their feet wet.
It's almost, this is kind of, Elijah and I have talked about this, and we haven't with you, but I want to right now. It's almost like this is what I want from a spring game. And I mean that.
So just move these all towards the spring?
Well, no, I don't want to move the bowl games per se.
Might as well, right?
Well, that wouldn't bother me. Wouldn't bother me. But bowl games are still what they are, and I am not one who wants to call a bowl game meaningless.
You know how ticked off I would have been if they moved the bowl game? A guy that wasn't, I wasn't projected to get drafted on, this stuff, but that was my last time to play. And it was against Ohio State, and I couldn't play in it because they did it in the spring.
Well, let me clarify what I mean by I want to see this in the spring is I want to see them play real teams.
I put it in the spring, but that's yes.
Yeah, I want to see them play real team. But this is what it's become, and that's just why getting that sixth win, if nothing else, for any college football team is so important because it guarantees you the ability to have these practices in December, which South Carolina did miss out on last year. Now, clearly last year they overcame it, if you will, and look at what they did this year. But and even for Nick, as I sit here and talk out loud, and I guess TJ too, the possibility of having the conversations with the collective on, hey, where's your status? What could we do for you? And look, and schools across the country will have that. So I want to be careful in how I name specific players because I have zero idea as to what their conversations
$5 million
are like.
to play in a bowl game, but it's that's the crazy part.
Or to come back, Ryan, is my point. To come back for a final season of eligibility.
A lot of guys now they got to weigh that option because sometimes you're making more money. Shoot, heck, a lot of times you're making more money in college right now for these really high touted players instead of going to the NFL, where you could be, you're gambling on where I am in draft status, where I am.
If you're not a first round pick, you're making the rookie minimum, and you're gonna. There's some schools that'll say, oh, you're going to be a third round pick, and you would make X. Well, we'll pay you Y, which is double X.
Yeah, and there's a reason. Like Spencer came back. There's a reason that you see some of these guys come back, which is good for the college sport, but it's a lot of money, and that's whole nother issue. But it's. They definitely right now are going to have to open the pocketbook up for some of these guys to come back.
Cut number 5. Do we have time for this? Oh, no, I don't. I'll tell you what. All right, I'll come back. We got a lot more to get to. Shane speaking on the bowl game, on Dowell Loggins. Ryan is with us. We got the national discussion to get into. Certainly want to hear from you, especially while Brew's here on the Gamecocks, 803-404-6100. It's a Reaction Monday. We're reacting to all kinds of stuff across the college football landscape. This is the Postgame Show.
Quick word, my friends, over at Prize Picks. I've been telling you all season long that with Prize Picks, you can win up to 100 times your cash. But it's the season of giving. It's Pickmas, as they like to call it, over at Prize Picks. And now the stakes have been raised. I have been telling you all you do is pick more or less on at least 2 players. For now, you can do it to be a shot up to 1,000 times your cash. 1,000 times your cash. Make your holidays bigger and brighter with Prize Picks, the best place to get real money action while watching your favorite sports and cashing in on your sports knowledge. You're listening to this station right now, so you must know ball. You can be able to cash in on that at Prize Picks. Join now because the holiday season, Prize Picks is giving away 2 free picks in December, and they're giving away $30+ million in rewards during Pickmas. Download the app today. Use promo code 1075GAME and get $50 instantly after you play your first $5 lineup. Again, promo code 1075GAME. Prize Picks. Run your game. From the WIS Traffic Studios, I'm Elijah Campbell. The few accidents to get to you that are causing some issues on the roadways, including a serious fire on 77 northbound that has the left lane completely blocked between Decker Boulevard at exit 13 and Percival Road near exit 15. So if you're on 77 northbound, be careful there. There's a serious fire that is causing some severe traffic backup. We also have an accident on Fairway Drive near Wellbrook Road, Farrow Road at Highway 555 near Highway 277, Hardscrabble Road near Lee Road, Highway 302 at US 176 and Charleston Highway, 26 westbound at Broad River Road and Ballantine Road near exit 101, I-77 northbound at US 21 and exit 24, and on Zimmelcrest Drive at Broad River Road. No drive around the SEC, but we still continue our conversation with Ryan Brewer from earlier this week here on the Postgame Show.
Talking Carolina football, talking the playoff, talking cold weather games. 14-year-old Ryan Brewer fumbling in a playoff game because it was -12 and his hands were as blue as Boise's field.